The title of this podcast is Weak Model or Strong Model of Leadership. I am part of a team at Mayo Clinic that works on leadership and development. And we have in this particular series that we're working on, it's called Emerging Leaders, in which physicians that have been nominated by their department leaders as someone who has potential to be part of senior leadership. They want them to go through this 12-month course with us in which we introduce them to a lot of different topics. Well-being, how to handle difficult conversations, really getting a deep understanding of how the organization is structured, how to have a meaningful career at Mayo Clinic, how to contribute, as well as all the things that a person might need on their leadership journey or journey to leadership. And most recently, we had an individual, Dr. Clark Otley, came and gave a talk. And I met him last year, and I was super impressed with him. He's in part at the time he was working on business development, but since he started to work on what Mayo Clinic calls platform, which has to do with our digital capabilities and data and those things. Not a whole lot, that I want to share about that because it's really not relevant to the story. But what really impressed me when I talked to him last year and we were prepping him for the upcoming session is I like to ask a lot of open-ended questions. I really want to know the human being beyond what your job title is and what your clinical expertise is. I want to go beyond that. I want to know about the human being, so I ask a lot of questions. And he shared a lot of ups and downs in his career, some he things that he had expectations and attached and were attached to, and that didn't turn out that way. And I want to know how he handled it. And I encouraged him to share more about that than this other stuff that he was working on at Mayo Clinic, because I thought that would be equally as beneficial and meaningful for the people that were part of the emerging leaders cohort. And so he shared this idea most recently about weak model or strong model of leadership. And he said at Mayo Clinic, we have what's called a weak model of leadership. Like there are a lot of things that you do not have the authority to do at Mayo Clinic. And whereas in some forms of corporate life or professional life, you have leaders that have a strong model. They can make decisions, which includes compensation, firing and hiring people, by themselves. Like they can make people's job very difficult. They have a lot of latitude to do those things. However, at Mayo Clinic, at least at the physician level, the chair of the department, that doesn't work that way. And so, how do you get people to align with the strategy, align their own interests in their work with the strategy of a particular department, as well as the entire enterprise? How do you do that? And he said the way that you have to do it when you have a weak model of leadership at an organization is it requires you to inspire people to support the strategy. Whereas with a strong model, it relies on a stick versus a carrot. It relies heavily on fear to get people to do what you want them to do. And I think about what has resonated with me the most over my life has been the weak model of leadership. I had no idea that's what it was until he defined it that way. But when I think about that, the people that have been the most inspiring in my life, the most compelling, the people that I've respected the most have been the people that have made requests of me rather than demands. Now they still have a high standard, but they want to partner and me meeting or exceeding that standard. That's a completely different way of going about it. The communication is different. Communication is encouraging, is supportive. And even when they have to give feedback that the recipient may not, be looking forward to, they do it in such a way that you feel that they care about your best interests, as well as the interests of what they have been entrusted to carry out for the organization, but they have a way of doing it. And a lot of this, I think, is because they worked on themselves. And that has been the most inspiring model of leadership for me, from coaches to family members. They've all had this amazing way of leading in that way. Now, I've also had some coaches too, or some leaders that led by fear. My stepfather, basketball coaches, our Marine Corps drill instructors are great examples of that. And they were very effective, except they weren't inspiring. And the first chance that I would have gotten to be in a different situation, I would have taken it because it just doesn't feel good to be talked to or treated in a way that is disrespectful or one that doesn't invite partnership and collaboration. With that being said, I also want to be fully transparent that for some period of my life, the way that I led was this strong model of leadership to where I would lead by punishing as opposed to uplifting or inspiring. And since then, I've had a couple of experiences in which I heard I was on the other side of someone treating me that way as an adult in an area in which I felt very limited, an area in which I felt that I, just wasn't up to the task. One was in swimming. I've had people yell at me trying to get me to learn how to swim. And I had a person like Ann Wilson who was kind, who was supportive, who was just an incredible person in the way in which she taught me how to swim and compassionate. And that example was the first example that I had in which I saw there's a different way of doing this that's much more effective. And that really spoke to me. And over the years, I've had other people do it too, coaches in pickleball and leaders that I've worked with over the years at Mayo Clinic and the way that they've done it. It's just been a completely different ball game. And it's more than changing the language because I've had leaders, a leader at Mayo Clinic that I've had before, that everything about them is inviting partnership, not only with the words that they use, but how they behave. Whereas I've had leaders most recently that they're using the right language, but the way in which they are behaving is not one that invites partnership. And so in the latter case, what do you do with that? I use my practice so that I remember that I'm here to serve. And if this is their approach, I want to learn how to handle it. And in doing so, I carry out what they've asked me to do. That's what I'm getting paid to do. And more than that, it helps me with my practice to really grow, to let go of it having to be a certain way for me to be okay or experience joy and fulfillment in carrying out the task that I've been entrusted with. So with that, I ask you, which suits you best in terms of the people that you work with? People that are expressing a strong leadership model, or people that are doing so through the latter, a weak model of leadership. And then how do you lead? How do you behave? Are you behaving as a parent, a spouse, a colleague, a friend, a daughter or son? Are you behaving in a way that is the weak model or the strong model? You have a choice. One of them encourages affinity between the people that you are engaged with. One of them offers a road to inner peace and fulfillment, and the other doesn't offer connection with other people, is the exact opposite. And it doesn't offer any peace, inner peace, or fulfillment. It only causes suffering for you and for others. So choose wisely.